NBA and Los Angeles Clippers, who are now 5-16 and a complete disaster. They announced this morning that Chris Paul is no longer a part of their team.
The NBA was still trying to process Chris Paul getting pushed out of the Clippers in the ugliest way possible. But what nobody saw coming was the quiet bomb that James Harden and Kawhi Leonard dropped about Ty Lue's role in CP3's exit. And yeah, it gets dark fast. Let's break it down. Picture this for a second. It's around 3 a.m. Eastern on December 4th, 2025. The Los Angeles Clippers are on a road trip, locked into their team hotel in Atlanta, getting ready to face the Hawks the next night. While the world is asleep, Chris Paul is wide awake. A 12-time All-Star, an 11-time All-NBA selection, one of the greatest playmakers ever, second only to John Stockton in assists.
Aside, I don't like it. It just didn't work out like we thought it would. And like I said, I don't like it for CP. But it just wasn't a good fit. We understood that, and so like I said, it was an organization. They made the choice. And so moving forward, we got to see what we do. We'll see.
The face of the Lob City era, the man many still call the greatest Clipper of all time. And in that moment, CP3 finds out it's over. His run with the franchise where he built his legacy is officially done. But here's where it turns brutal. Chris Paul didn't hear this in a clean office meeting back in LA. No respectful call from ownership, no warning. Instead, he's pulled into a late-night 3-hour meeting at a hotel in Atlanta with Lawrence Frank, the Clippers' president of basketball operations. That's how he learns he's being sent home. And right after it ends, CP3 doesn't wait for the team to spin it. He posts it himself on Instagram. Being sent home, peace, that's it? A peace sign emoji? That's how one of the greatest point guards in NBA history announces the collapse of his Clippers' return. And trust me, this is only where the chaos starts. And this is where the story goes completely off the rails.
NBA and Los Angeles Clippers, who are now 5-16 and a complete disaster. They announced this morning that Chris Paul is no longer a part of their team. The Clippers sent Paul back to LA from Atlanta on a one-way ticket.
James Harden and Kawhi Leonard had no idea this was coming. Zero warning, no heads up, nothing. Let that sink in. The two faces of the Clippers, the players the entire franchise is built around, they found out the same way we did, by opening their phones and seeing it blow up on social media. No call from the front office, no message from the coaching staff, no respect shown at all. A future Hall of Famer gets sent home in the middle of the night and nobody thinks to loop in their franchise players. That alone tells you how broken things are. After the Clippers' 115-92 win over the Hawks, reporters caught up with Harden and Kawhi, and their reactions said everything. Harden didn't sugarcoat it at all. I'm just as confused and shocked as you guys. The world definitely surprised me, but not just Chris. It's a lot that we were dealing with. I guess the front office felt that was the best decision for the organization. Catch that line. Not just Chris. That's the tell. This wasn't one problem. This was a stack of problems.
Here's Ramona Shelburne. She posted it onto X. Just found out I'm being sent home. Peace. Chris Paul posted that onto Instagram.
And the front office thought cutting Chris Paul would magically clean it all up. That's not a solution. That's panic. And it screams dysfunction from the top down. Yeah, this iceberg is way bigger than CP3. And then there's Kawhi Leonard, a guy known for saying almost nothing. Short answers, no drama, no speeches. But even Kawhi couldn't hide the shock this time. He straight up called the news shocking, and that alone tells you how wild this was. What makes it crazier? Kawhi admitted he'd been having positive, productive conversations with Chris Paul about fixing the team and turning the season around. Let that sink in. While Kawhi and CP3 are talking solutions, the front office is quietly pulling the plug. No warning, no conversation, just boom, Paul is gone, sent home like he caused all the problems. Some people tried blaming the players for this mess, saying Harden and Kawhi should have done more. But analysts on PTI shut that down fast. They made it clear, this disaster starts at the top. Now let's talk about how this exploded, because the buildup was ugly. Chris Paul had been pushing accountability for weeks. Players, coaches, management, nobody was off limits. That didn't sit well, especially with head coach Ty Lue.
Leonard is on a minute restriction. And sources told me that when he was guarding Klay Thompson, he was struggling when he got into the game after sitting down for a while. He was struggling keeping up with Klay Thompson. And so there was a timeout call late in that fourth quarter. And during the fourth quarter, and during that timeout, Chris Paul went to Kawhi Leonard and said, hey, man, are you fresh enough? Do you feel good? Do you feel like you can stick with Klay Thompson? And he asked the teammates, he said, hey, y'all might want to switch this. Wait till he gets warm until he goes and guards.
Reports say CP3 and Lou weren't even speaking for weeks before the release. Meanwhile, the Clippers were drowning. A brutal 6-16 start to the 2025-26 season. Second worst record in the West. And here's the nightmare part. They don't even own their own draft pick. That pick belongs to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they're losing nonstop with no future safety net. This wasn't just bad luck. This was a full-blown organizational meltdown. They couldn't even tank properly. No draft pick, no reset, no escape. And behind the scenes, the chemistry was already cooked. Now that we've seen the public shock from James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, it's time to expose what was really happening behind closed doors. Because the reported rift between Chris Paul and head coach Ty Lue explains everything. According to multiple reports, CP3 and Ty Lue hadn't spoken for weeks leading up to the release.
My sense of this is that it's on the general manager and the coach. Okay, they stink. They have lost 14 of their last 16 games.
Their communication was limited to bare minimum on-court exchanges only. Ty Lue immediately pushed back, saying that's not true. But here's the problem. The details don't back him up. When Ty Lue finally addressed the media, his response was calm, but revealing. He admitted he didn't like how things ended, and then dropped the real line. It just wasn't a good fit. Read that again. That's Ty Lue basically confirming that Chris Paul's demanding leadership style clashed with what the Clippers wanted. And then things get even more telling. One reported incident involving assistant coach Jeff Van Gundy perfectly shows how tense it had become. During a game against the Dallas Mavericks, Kawhi Leonard was on a minutes restriction and struggling after sitting too long.
And so when you think about and we hear these stories about, oh, Ty Lue wasn't speaking to him, or he wouldn't take a meeting with him, or they wasn't on speaking terms for 3 weeks, it gets you to thinking, what the hell was CP3 doing? You get sent home at 3 o'clock in the morning? What the hell were you doing in that locker room? Because it wasn't just because of that event, that situation that happened. It was stuff that was that kept building up throughout the course of the season. He was doing stuff behind Ty Lue's back, going to players, whispering, saying things and causing turmoil when the team is already struggling and going through a lot.
Late in the fourth, Chris Paul suggested switching the defensive matchup until Kawhi got warmed up, a smart in-game adjustment. That moment sparked tension on the bench. NBA insider Chris Haynes later broke down how that single exchange highlighted the growing divide between Paul and the coaching staff. This wasn't one argument. This was weeks of friction finally snapping. Now this is where things get really interesting. The very next day on the team plane, Jeff Van Gundy pulls Chris Paul aside for a meeting.
Just speaking on this specific incident that Chris is talking about, I've had those conversations with guys as we're leaving the huddle. Hey, let's try to look at this, let's try to look at that. That's based on the trust that I've built with those guys, and that's based on the trust that I've built with the coaching staff. I am one of those guys that I will refuse to let one guy take down 15.
Van Gundy straight up asked CP3 if he changed the defensive assignment during that Mavericks game. Paul explains it clearly. He didn't change anything. He suggested an adjustment, that's it. But Van Gundy's response said everything. According to Chris Haynes, the conversation got confrontational fast. And then came the line that changed the tone completely. You might have had leeway in other places, but you don't have that leeway here. Read that again. That's the coaching staff telling a future Hall of Famer, a 12-time All-Star, a man who's run elite NBA offenses for 20 years, that his voice wasn't welcome. And CP3 didn't stay quiet. He posted a screenshot on Instagram with the definition of the word leeway. No caption, no explanation, message received. The panel on NBA on Prime jumped all over this. They said conversations like this should be normal, not confrontational. Udonis Haslem, a locker room legend, made it clear trust is everything in those moments. But the tension didn't stop there. Multiple sources say Paul's constant critiques of practices, rotations, and discipline started wearing thin, even with Harden and Kawhi.
So I was told that Jeff Van Gundy told Chris Paul, listen, you might have had leeway in other places to be able to, to change up defensive coverages, but you don't have that leeway here. And that was just one of the minor verbal incidents between Jeff Van Gundy and Chris Paul. That was one of a few.
They were publicly shocked by his exit, but privately, frustration had been building. And then Kendrick Perkins weighed in. He pointed out something important. For Ty Lue to completely stop talking to someone, something serious had to go down. This wasn't random. This was pressure, pride, and power colliding. Now let's be clear for a second. There are multiple perspectives here, and the truth probably lives somewhere in the middle. But one thing is undeniable. Ty Lue himself admitted this ending wasn't what he wanted for Chris Paul. Lue openly showed respect for CP3 while admitting the dynamic just didn't work.
Really layered situation, clearly. So what's next for CP3?
Well, I reached out to Chris Paul. He hasn't spoke yet, but I did reach out to him and asked him that very question, and he sent me a response back. And in his text message response, he said, "I'm just staying ready. I'm hooping right now. I don't know what's next."
When asked directly if he wanted to see Chris Paul go out like this, Ty Lue didn't dodge it. His response was honest but resigned, like someone who knew the situation had already slipped out of his hands. That raises the real question. Was Ty Lue actually part of the decision to send Paul home, or was this an organizational call led by Lawrence Frank? And when Ty Lue was asked if he agreed with the move and whether it would help the team, his answer was eye-opening. "I don't think it'll necessarily help our team. I don't think the reason why we're 5-16 is because of CP's play." Read that again? Even the head coach is saying this move won't fix anything. This team's problems run way deeper than one vocal veteran. They're ranked 28th in scoring, putting up just 111.6 points per game. They're giving up 116.8 points per game on defense. And Kawhi Leonard has already missed significant time with injuries. So now the big questions hit. What's next for Chris Paul? What's next for the Clippers? And how does this ripple across the rest of the NBA? Because make no mistake, this decision shook more than just one locker room.
Do I want to see CP go out like this? No, I have a lot of respect for him. He's been a friend of mine over the years, and you never want to see a great go out, like this. But I'm pretty sure he will find something because he's a great player. And so I didn't want to see it end like this.
And despite all of it, Chris Paul has handled this with nothing but class. No blow-ups, no chaos, just quiet professionalism. In an exclusive interview with People magazine published on December 9th, Chris Paul kept it simple and powerful. "I'm at peace with everything. No bitterness, no regret." Paul said he doesn't regret the experience at all, and that this unexpected ending has actually let him focus on family, including being able to attend his son's upcoming game. When NBA insider Chris Haynes reached out to ask what's next, CP3 stayed locked in. "I don't regret anything." That says it all. No complaints, no shots fired, just perspective from a 21-year NBA veteran. This is a guy who's been traded, criticized, doubted, and tested at every stage of his career. And through it all, he's kept his professionalism and dignity intact. But here's the part that really hurts.
Kind of wild, kind of crazy. Still kind of speechless. I'll probably have a lot of words later with my family. You sort of just taking it, the whole experience here and right now. This is one of those things I kind of manifested for a long time. Sort of tried to speak it into existence, but you just never know if it's really gonna happen, because I love to hoop. I love to play this game, but I love my family more than any of it.
Chris Paul originally framed the 2025-26 season as his final season. When he signed with the Clippers in July 2025, this was supposed to be a poetic homecoming, a farewell tour where it all began. This was meant to be the victory lap, the storybook ending. Instead, it turned into one of the coldest exits we've seen in years. When CP3 returned to LA, the emotion was real. He talked about family, legacy, and finishing where his career truly took off. Now the future is wide open. Chris Paul becomes trade eligible on December 15th, 2025, and speculation is already heating up. And yes, the Los Angeles Lakers have been floated as a potential storybook twist. One chapter closed quietly. The next one, still unwritten. Given Chris Paul's close relationship with LeBron James, the Los Angeles Lakers naturally stay in the conversation. The Oklahoma City Thunder also makes sense considering CP3's successful 2019-20 run, where he mentored Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Betting odds have even placed the Cleveland Cavaliers as early favorites at plus 300, while the San Antonio Spurs and Miami Heat have also been mentioned as possible landing spots. But let's be real, the destination isn't what set the basketball world on fire. It's how Chris Paul was treated. Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back at all. He went straight at the Clippers, reminding everyone of CP3's credentials and calling the entire situation pathetic and embarrassing.
First of all, you Lawrence Frank, you was brought there as an assistant coach under Doc Rivers. How is it that you go from an assistant coach to Doc Rivers, who, by the way, was running basketball operations and was the head coach of the Clippers, to all of a sudden being put over Doc Rivers as the head of basketball operations? And ultimately, Doc Rivers is gone. You talk about something, I don't know about, at the very least, we could say that smells.
Former NBA champion Draymond Green issued a serious warning to players across the league. His message? If this can happen to an icon like Chris Paul, anyone is disposable, and that's not exactly how you attract free agents. Carmelo Anthony also blasted the Clippers, calling their handling of the situation flat out disrespectful. And zoom out for a second, because this isn't just about CP3. The Clippers gave up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps for Paul George in 2019. Paul George is now in Philadelphia, and the Clippers got nothing back. They emptied the cupboard for James Harden, handed Kawhi Leonard massive extensions despite constant injuries, and now they're 6-18, the oldest team in the league, with their best player available only part-time. Chris Paul wasn't the problem, he was the warning sign. Stephen A. Smith went even further. He openly questioned how Lawrence Frank rose to power, and whether the decisions made under his leadership have quietly driven this franchise off a cliff. And suddenly, the idea of a Clippers curse came roaring back. From the Donald Sterling era to endless playoff collapses, this team has a long history of dysfunction. One writer put it perfectly. The Clippers aren't just unlucky, they nurture the curse themselves. Dumping Chris Paul for wanting to win too badly? That's self-inflicted damage. The panel on NBA on Prime raised a huge point about structure. Udonis Haslem didn't hesitate. Locker room issues should be handled by the people in the locker room, not executives detached from the daily grind. So what's the final verdict? Yes, Chris Paul is a demanding leader. That style works wonders with young, hungry teams. But on a veteran roster full of stars, pride, and egos, it can rub people the wrong way. That part is fair, but let's not twist this. The way the Clippers handled this was disgraceful. You don't send a future Hall of Famer home in the middle of the night. You don't end a legacy run with a 3-hour hotel meeting in Atlanta. You fly him back to Los Angeles. You sit down with him and his family. You work out a buyout with dignity, and you let him walk away on his terms. Anything less? That's not basketball culture. That's organizational failure. Stephen A. Smith summed up exactly how most of the basketball world feels right now when he spoke about the treatment of a 21-year veteran like Chris Paul, because that's not how this story should have ended. But that's what happened, and now the Los Angeles Clippers have to live with it. A decision that damaged their reputation, a decision that alienated their fan base, and a decision that sent a loud message to every free agent in the league about how this organization treats its legends. As for James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, they're stuck in the middle of the chaos. Trying to win games while drowning in outside noise and internal dysfunction, their shock may have been real, but you can't help but wonder how much they truly knew about what was brewing behind closed doors. The Chris Paul chapter in Clippers history is officially over. What comes next for CP3, the Clippers, and everyone involved is still unknown. But one thing is undeniable. This is a story the NBA won't forget anytime soon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe, share the video, and click one of the boxes on your screen to keep it going.